Hey guys, below this in Good Fences Part 2 is a list of all these different heresies. And there's all these kind of big words and big names for these heresies. But in this chart, I want you to read what they thought about Jesus and why it was incorrect. It's this chart that's going to kind of tell you why these heresies are incorrect. And basically there's two things that a lot of these heresies just kind of got wrong a lot of times. For the most part, these heresies believed that a lot of times that the Son of God was kind of created, that there was a time that the Son of God was not. This was a famous line from Arianism, that the Son of God was created from the Father. And this is incorrect. The Son of God has always existed, has always existed. And the Son of God came down in the person of Jesus, okay, and assumed a human nature. And this is really important. So if we can kind of draw it up, there's the Trinity. They're up in heaven, right? Here's this triangle of the Trinity. And they're in heaven, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then the Son descended from heaven to earth to be with us and took on a human nature. Okay? So this is super important to realize because the Son of God has always existed, just like the Holy Spirit and the Father have always existed. And this is what a lot of those heresies get incorrect on that. Okay? The Son of God has always, always, always existed. Okay? And then took on a human nature in the year 0, right? When Jesus was born a baby, or when he was incarnate in Mary's womb, when he became flesh. This is when the Son of God became man, okay? And so then there's this problem that we get a lot of times too, and a lot of the heresies get wrong, is this idea of who Jesus is, right? You and I, we have one nature. One nature in us. It's a human nature. It will always be a human nature. Jesus, now he's a little different. He's pretty special. Okay? And Jesus had two natures. Okay? Two natures. And there's this fancy word that the church kind of breathed life into. It's called the hypostatic union. This big word. You don't need to remember that, okay? And unless you want to impress your friends at some party that you know all about the hypostatic union. But the hypostatic union is this union of the two natures, right? So when we act, we always act as a human. When we think as a human. When we do something, when we go to the grocery store, we pick out groceries as a human. Great, you're always a human. You're pretty easy to figure out. Now, Jesus, the Son of God, that's a little bit harder to figure out. But that's why it's a mystery and we have faith in it. Okay, and the church teaches that he had these two natures. He had a divine nature, and he had a human nature that always worked in union. That's why it's called the hypostatic union. They worked in union together. Okay? Some of the heresies thought, oh, these two natures just came together and made this like super person named Jesus, and he just had this super cool nature. That's incorrect too. He had two natures that were uncompromised, but worked together. Okay? Now the thing is, you don't have a divine nature. I don't have a divine nature. We have no idea how a divine nature works. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know how it acts. We don't know what a divine nature is. We can't. But we do know a lot about a human nature because we have one. And so a lot of times when we look at the Son of God, when we look at Jesus, we think of only his human nature. His divine nature is just as much in play in every action that he makes, in every thought he makes, in every action that he wills. Everything that he does has these two natures. Okay? And the hypostatic union, there's another video below that's going to talk about it a little bit more too. But those are what most of these heresies get wrong. Okay? So read this chart below and read this chart about the heresies. And a lot of times you're going to see that they thought different things, and they thought that the Son of God just kind of was created, and that these two natures didn't really work together. And as we talked about in the video below, they're also going to think a lot of times that, okay, he was kind of a God that didn't look human. That's incorrect. He's fully human. And that sometimes that he was just a human that kind of looked like God, that played God. And that's incorrect too. Fully human, fully God, same time. And that's hard for us to wrap our brains around. But it's important to read through these heresies and talk about them. So after you're done watching this video, watch another video on the heresies below, and then oh, sorry, watch another video about the hypostatic union below, and then below that answer some questions, and then we'll be done talking about heresies, I promise. So thanks guys, bye.